Anyways, okay, so today, we're going longer today because we heard that there wasn't enough time to actually do the contracts. And we want to make sure that we have enough time to do contracts. So today is the buyer questionnaire, and then we're going to go into the contract, right? And then we'll finish up contracts on Thursday.
Perfect.
Okay?
Okay, so.
Buyer questionnaire, do you guys have those?
Yeah, who was involved? Who was here for the buyer questionnaire last time?
You got that sheet, the cheat sheet that I created and we threw it on the workshop? Okay. Megan, you were here for that?
I don't think I was here for that.
You weren't here for that? I'll go grab a couple of those sheets and we can show you that. It's also on the
Slack.
The Slack. Mm-hmm.
It's in the Slack channel?
That way you can download it, right? And you use it anytime you want.
So once you pull it, just pull it up on your Slack in Slack.
There you go. Anna, do you have that?
Where would it be?
I'm
looking.
It's in workshops.
Okay.
And it will be at the beginning. And it's a PDF.
Opportunity checklist?
Nope.
No, your buyer wants
Nope.
to write an offer?
Your buyer wants to write an offer, and now what? So
Yes,
it's-
I do it.
I made it pretty, right?
You did, it's beautiful.
I figured the color coordinating would help separate each of the questions and make them stand out more. I don't know. Okay, so that's it. We want to go through first.
Yeah, let's go through, let's just start at number one.
I'm gonna pull it up on here.
Yeah, let's start at number one and work our way through. So, number one.
Actually, I don't think I can pull it up on here.
Yeah, you can have Slack down there.
Because I don't have Slack on here.
Let me send it to you real quick.
Yeah, will you email it to me real fast? And let me know which email you're emailing it to.
You know what, it doesn't let me send it via email.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Yeah, it's done. Hold on. Go ahead, Nick.
Zoom. Okay. Grab it in my Dropbox.
So let me just start, we'll just get, so we don't have quiet
Yeah,
space.
go.
So, question number one, who will be the buyers and what are their legal names? So why do we need their legal names?
Legal contract.
Yeah, yeah, we want to make sure that they're a legal entity, so to speak. You know, like not that you're an entity, but like we want to be able to tie the name you give to the person purchasing the property. It's not, you know, it's great to have their legal name. You don't have to have their full name. Some people want to take title, like so. At the beginning of the contract, as you'll see, the first thing we do is identify who the buyer and the seller are and who represents them. And so we want to make sure that obviously those names all line up in the right order, so it's easily identifiable, so they know who is representing them. Now at the end of the contract, we put how they're taking title, and sometimes people take title under different names than what they do than their legal name, or it could be a trust, LLC, or maybe they just sign Kelly Diaz, but when they purchase, they want Kelly Brian Diaz on the deed. So that's why it'd be good to know those things. But that's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, what is the price they would like to purchase the home for? It's pretty good. It's probably the biggest question, right? Biggest hurdle, biggest question. So what I've kind of seen on our first offers that some of us are writing is that our offers aren't always the most competitive as they could be. And that's either because we haven't found our voice to advise our clients on how much the purchase price should be, or we just don't know. But I think it's really important to, once you have a client interested in the property, call that listing agent, find out how many offers there are. So even if you don't have your voice and you can't say, there's no chance in heck that we ever gonna get this offer accepted, you can at least say, when they tell you they want to write it for $10,000 less with $10,000 of closing costs and a home warranty, that you can at least say, hey, just so you know, they do have 3 other offers on this property. Or they have one in hand, they set a deadline. We want to make sure we're putting our best foot forward. So conversation I have with people, and sometimes this goes into escalation clauses and just offer prices in general. But if people ask me, like, if I say, well, what do you want to, how much do you want to offer? And they said, I don't know, how much do you think we should offer? I would never answer that question because it's not my place. But what I say to them, if I know it's going to be competitive, I say, look, just offer a price or escalation clause, top price, lid, to a number where if you paid $1 more for it, you'd be upset that you purchased the price for this amount. So, put your best foot forward. make a competitive offer if this is really your home. And if it's not really your home, then maybe like, why are we writing offers on it in the first place, right? The other side, the flip side of that coin, I'll backtrack a little bit. If I'm working with somebody for the first time, I really want to get that first offer written, even if it's bad. I want to get it written as soon as possible. It's like breaking the seal, sort of like, it's like they're super tentative to write. I don't know. And then once they write, it's like they've mentally, in their mind, like accepted that they're going to buy a house and all the trappings and trimmings that come with it. And then more apt to write another offer shortly thereafter. I've noticed that, like, and maybe you have to time, like, it's hard sometimes to get them to write that first offer. You can spend 3 months showing property and they won't write that first offer. But once they write that first offer, the next one's like a week away if they don't get it, or sooner. So it seems like they just get right back on that horse and keep going.
It's that first one.
Yeah, it's that first one, super important. So even if it's not a great offer, make sure they're getting pen to paper. I do think though it's a good idea to just inform them, like, hey, we have multiple offers on this. You want to make sure that this is your best price. You make sure you're making the best offer you can on this property. Not trying to scare them, but just so that they don't look at you and go, well, why didn't we get it? We offered full price. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't tell you we had 12 offers. Like, you wouldn't want to have that conversation. I'm always in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, I wouldn't want to have that conversation. So I'm always like thinking about what are the things that I don't want to have to tell people. So let's get out ahead of it and try to tell them a few things early. But facts, not a thing. Let's tell them facts. We don't have to tell them what to do. We just should tell them why they should do it. Does that make sense? Okay.
Actually, a question on that.
Yeah.
Someone said, or there's a deadline. Is it good to put your offer in early or to wait?
Right. So the question is timing around an offer deadline. So every once in a while you'll see an offer deadline come up and it go pending before.
Yep.
And it's the most unprofessional thing. If I was a listing agent and my client's going to do that, I would be furious because it look like an idiot because you can't hold off. You can't do what you say you're going to do. With that said, I would have a conversation with the listing agent, be like, hey, so you're going to stick to the deadline, right? Yeah, we're going to stick to the deadline. Okay, so like you promised me you're sticking to, like, if you're not going to stick to the deadline, can you at least promise to call me? Yes, usually that's a yes answer. Because they do want to get the most for the home, they have obligation to. Now the only way that may not be true is if they were to represent the buyer as well, and they're thinking about, ooh, look at all that commission money I'm going to make when I double end this. I'm going to get the 3.5 and the 2.5.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a big paycheck. So there would be a time where they may not get back to it. It would be bad business, and I think that 99.9% of the time you won't run into that. I am a believer of putting it in the very last moment, like enough time to make sure they had it. So if the offer deadline's 9 a.m. on Monday, I'm sending my offer over about 8:30 because I don't want my offer to get shocked. I don't want her saying, I've got 12 offers, right? I want her saying, well, I've got 2 and I think I'm going to have more, but I don't know. Like,
They can't give you details about.
they could. There's no rules.
They're not
Everybody-
supposed to.
There's no rule. There's no rule.
Well, they can only tell you whatever the seller says is okay.
Yeah, right. The sellers, well, I don't really know if that's a thing. I mean, there may be something in the Realtor Code of Ethics about that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But they absolutely can. I absolutely do. If
They can tell you, yeah, we have an offer at full price. Or we have an
Oh,
offer
absolutely.
20 grand over, or we have an offer. They can
Yeah.
tell-
And you
say
can
that.
absolutely ask.
yeah,
Yes, you
right?
can ask, but can you disclose that if you're
Yeah.
listening?
yeah. I think you're right. I think you want to have your clients' information. Like your clients,
But
like,
you can be there, but-
you have to have your client's permission to do it. Like, hey, it's okay. How do you want to handle this? Do you want me to tell people we have multiple offers? Do you want me to
The
keep it
person
secret?
offering, you don't have to ask them, can I disclose to other people offering what your offer is? So the
No,
buyer.
you don't have to give permission.
It all comes down to
You don't need to
the
give permission.
seller.
Yeah, it's a seller.
The
So-
seller has to give you permission to share that there's other offers and information
See, I
about it.
would think that would be a little bit of a perk, because if you said, yeah, we got one, it's 20 grand offer, or over, just in this market, then you could potentially get
Mhm.
30.
offers over, I don't
Yeah.
know, but then
Or
I was
none.
kind of like, well,
So,
why don't agents do that? Because I really feel like agents
well,
don't.
it's kind of dirty. I mean, not dirty.
It's kinda dirty.
Nobody wants to
You're
get their
trying to
offer.
like,
I just feel, I don't feel like people, I just feel like if you had a reputation for doing that all the time, people would get tired, wouldn't love it. I think agents wouldn't like that.
We had an agent who we could guarantee every single time you called her, to ask if there was another offer on the property. Every single time, oh yeah, we've got offers on the property,
When you
even
don't.
if there weren't.
Now that's.
Because
That's-
wrong,
now
we
right?
that's-
all knew
now
that
that's-
that's what she did.
That's against the rules. Yes,
Okay.
that is a violation. That's
And
not fair and
you
honest.
can
Yeah.
show proof in a way, right? If you, because we bought a house a couple years ago, and I feel like they did that, but the house out there for 10 days, and in one weekend, then 3 offers came in, that's kind of weird. So you can't, and we didn't know that you could like, you can
Well-
ask them, can you show me proof that you have other offers? Because they were basically saying, you need to go up a little bit more.
You could, I mean, you
And you're
could,
like,
what you could do is you could have, and not that I would have gone for this, but you could have wrote an addendum that said, you know, or use the escalation
Escalation
clause
clause.
that would call for, but you could use the escalation clause verbiage that says, you know, upon acceptance, seller to provide proof of other offers.
okay.
You could put that term, but there's no, otherwise there'd be no obligation to show.
Right.
Yeah.
So it has to be
Well, and if I
contract.
am the only offer, they're gonna accept it, sit there for 10 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just the nuances behind when to share, not to share. So in 2016 and 17 was the last time we had a big market like this, anything like what we've had recently. And there became a time where after it was, you know, the market was going up and multiple offers, people were in a frenzy and they're just writing crazy offers and things were getting big. But then as it started to level off and become a little bit more normalized, sometimes you'd say to somebody, they'd ask if you had multiple offers, and you say yes, and they would come back with, oh, well, my client doesn't want to be in a multiple offer situation. And they wouldn't write. So that would be the downside of sharing multiple offers with somebody, is that they could get, there are buyers that don't want to do that. Now, our market's adjusting, like we're getting more and more like the California markets every day, where buyers they're getting used to not having the leverage that they had before. And so it's becoming more and more accustomed and more likely to expect multiple offers and not eject because of multiple offers. But it's a conversation to have with your client. That's how I'd explain it to your seller client. Say, this is the scenarios we could see. How would you like me to handle this? Would you like me to disclose? What I would tell to my clients is, I'd like to disclose to certain realtors that we've worked with before, or somebody whose terms we like. You know, if it's a really good cash offer with an agent you like, or an agent you know and you trust, well, that'd be maybe somebody you want to share the winning offer price to. That way, it's making for a more likely smooth transaction. Because you're actually known quantities, right? You may not know what the buyer's like, but at least you know what this one realtor's like, and you know what their terms are like. And if maybe that's enough to make you want to work with them. So, anything you want to add to that? Okay. So, back to the next one.
Next to the questionnaire.
Yep.
Number 3, earnest money.
What amount for earnest money? So in Oregon, the buyer's earnest money is really, really protected. You have to be a buffoon to lose it. Like there's so many ways to get out of the transaction. But you gotta remember, it still goes into a neutral third-party escrow account, right? So you don't want to put pie in the sky numbers in there, because if you have to argue about it, if they won't agree to release it, it still sits there until somebody decides and tells you what to do with it. So the downside of doing absorbent, like for doing like 2 or 3% earnest money, which is going to look really, really impressive on a piece of paper, is that if they ever got to skirmish about it, they could sit in a third-party account until everybody agrees to get rid of it. And the bigger the number, the more there is to divvy up, right? So 1% is certainly sufficient. I think 2% in this market is probably not a bad idea either. Between 1 and 2. It's usually between 1 and 2%. I think less than 1% would, if I'm a listing agent, I saw it was like 0.5%, I'd kind of be like,
Questionable.
Seriously.
where's their cash? Yeah, where's their cash? They have cash?
If you know you're in a multiple offer situation, that's the one thing.
That'd be one way to make it stand out a little bit. And you certainly want to make sure they knew that you're putting down, make sure that it was part of your offer presentation, that it was more, yeah. Sorry. I keep using my phone. What will their down payment be? That's a really good question, right? So their down payment includes their earnest money, right? So when you're doing your offer, the earnest money is a portion of the down payment. Depending on what their loan pack program is, would depend on what their down payment is. 20% usually gets you out of mortgage insurance, which is a big hurdle for a lot of people, because mortgage insurance isn't something that anybody ever gets back, right? So the things in our payments, on our mortgage payments, our PITI, that principal, interest, taxes, insurance every month. Principal is like a savings account. The interest is a partial write-off. Taxes are gone, insurance are gone, right? And insurance is not just property insurance, but it could be mortgage insurance, right? So for your clients, it's better to not pay that, probably better to not pay that mortgage insurance if they can avoid it. So getting up to that 20% threshold is important, but it's a good conversation with them to have with their lenders. And if they've had a lot of different assets, maybe it's better for them to keep their cash and pay the mortgage insurance, who knows? But like ideally, like that 20% mark is kind of the threshold for people. There are a few loan programs where it's like 10%. And I think what they've done, and this is pretty clever, I don't think you can write off mortgage insurance. But I think they've been figuring out, getting really clever in this one package where they have raised the interest rate a little bit, which I imagine pays for mortgage insurance in some way, or somehow makes it offsets the mortgage insurance, and then your client gets that tax write-off again. So I think that's a pretty cool product. But FHA can be as low as 3.5%. VA is 0%.
Conventional can be 3.5 too, depending on.
But yeah, it can be depending on the program. Yeah. And it'd be great to avoid the benefits of FHA is it has a low, it has the most liberal income to debt ratios.
Yeah.
I think you get like the 30%, like 32% or something. But like
It can
conventional's
actually,
like 25.
didn't Josh say last week it could get up to 55?
Oh, you're kidding me. Wow, crazy.
I think it was that one. Oh my God, I have to go back and watch
Yeah.
it.
So
One of them, we can get up to 55% debt to income ratio.
yeah, so I don't think you need to know all of this stuff. I think you just need to kind of be familiar with what products are out there. So when they come to you, you're not like, so you kind of have a working understanding in your mind of what that means for your client.
If you have a client who really wants a house and you're in a multiple offer situation and it's gonna go, prices gonna go up. Have you seen where people change programs to put less down payment so they have cash from the increase account?
Yeah, that's something that people can do.
Is that?
And it's not, I think it's a pretty good idea, but changing the loan program might ruin their ability to get the loan. So,
So you have to talk to their lender
right,
before you write the offer
yeah,
to like see if that's a
Yeah.
possibility.
Totally.
And a good standpoint from them.
absolutely. And that's not a bad idea. The, like we use, like we call it appraisal insurance or appraisal gap coverage. We have an appraisal addendum that addresses if the value of the home is, the appraised value of the home is less than the purchase price, and then how much extra your clients might bring to the table. But if they're doing a VA loan or if an FHA loan, those are actually moot. You can't actually use that agreement because of there's a VA escape clause and an FHA escape clause that's a federally, like the FHA, the VA will mandate this form signed by all parties saying that the house doesn't come in at the appraised value, then you don't have to purchase it. So if you're using one of these, if you're trying to do some gap coverage on that, appraisal gap coverage on that, it's not really, I mean, you can try it, you can say, hey, we're gonna do this, but there's gonna be an addendum that comes across the desk later that's gonna say, we are absolutely not gonna do this. This is that in order to close the loan, they'll have to sign the addendum that says, that's not an that's an option, but we can still back out. And so it's contradictory. I think it's kind of a bad faith to present it. But you could say, despite I don't think there's a term you could write that survive that mandatory clause. So if I was a listing agent, I would be like, no. So that's why I bring it up. So if you're trying to be competitive with a VA or FHA offer, and you're trying to include some gap coverage there, you don't really have it. It's not going to be a real thing. It's not actually going to be an enforceable term. Yeah.
Carrie was asking what was the last question. I think, Carrie, did you mean like in regards to the whole appraisal gap? Right? That was what the question was about. I'm multitasking over here, sorry.
The question was about should your client withhold some of their down payment on paper to make up for a lack of a low appraisal? So they had extra cash to bring in to close to cover the difference between the two. Okay, personal property, appliances. What's on the listing? any of the buyers do not want or do. So we're gonna do a presentation tomorrow in our meeting about personal property and fixtures, but it is a massive, massive gray area. So it's something that you want to consider while you're showing property, because this is where this all kind of starts, is your clients are starting to make assumptions about what's going to be in the house when they get it, probably at the showing, and then certainly at the home inspection, if the house is inhabited. And then when they get to closing, if those things aren't there that they thought were there, they're going to be upset. So what do we know? Like what stays and what goes? What's a fixture? What's personal property? In my mind, it's like whatever we agree it to be, because there are certain things that are certainly fixtures or certainly personal property, but there's a cajillion things that are really gray. So if you have any question about whether or not the curtains stay, or the blinds, or the TVs, or the TV mounts, or the speakers that hang from the wall, or any cajillion things,
They want it, write it in.
do they want it? Write it in. It's the best way
Even
to
the
go.
appliances, right?
Yeah.
Because the stove technically can slide right out and unplug, right? It's not fixed. Write it in. So I just write down everything that they want.
Freestanding range.
Double check the MLS to see if there's anything that's excluded,
Mhm.
and then write in, that's that question, right? Was there stuff there that you wanted? Had a buyer wanted a mirror.
Should you include like, that's.
You could put a date on it when you saw it. I think that's a good idea. I've never heard of anybody doing a bait and switch on it,
Yeah.
but you can totally see that happening, right?
Yeah,
You
like
can always see that happen.
refrigerators, I guess, are a big one.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
take a picture or double check right on the images if you can, if you forgot to do it while you're there. What type of fridge was it? How many doors did it have, right? Was it a pull out? Was it?
Yeah.
Because we have seen where they have swapped out for a different fridge. They left a fridge, you just asked for a fridge.
The three items you see most are refrigerator, washer, and dryer. Those are the three things. And the washer and dryer is a new one. As soon as washer and dryers got nicer, I think people decided that they wanted to start capturing them.
Expensive.
Well,
they're so expensive.
upstairs mostly too, so.
Yeah, right. If they're upstairs, it's like an easy get. No one wants to move them, right? So it's a pretty easy get for your clients. Yeah.
Yeah. So come to the team meeting tomorrow at 10, we're gonna go in depth on that,
Mhm.
right? Office meeting from every week, whatever. All right, we're here, financing.
So what type of loan, right? This goes back to we started this discussion. What type of loan, super important. Conventional, hard money. If you're working with like an investor, they may have, who's flipping homes, they may use hard money for a loan. Could be cash, could be FHA, VA, USDA, which is super uncommon, but you see that sometimes. So you want to obviously figure that out. I think it's great to have these conversations before you're writing the offer,
Absolutely.
because when you're showing the house, well, let's say one thing. Let's say you're showing condos, and you want to make sure they're an FHA buyer or VA buyer. You want to make sure that the condo you're showing is VA, FHA approved. And there's a website you can go to find that information. There's two websites. The VA has a website, the FHA has a website where you can search and find. You need to have the legal name of the condo, but you should be able to search and find it pretty easily. Because you don't want to go into contract and find out, oh, hey, we can't buy this because we have the wrong loan program.
Right. And then it goes into where their funds coming from.
Right. And then where are the funds coming from, right? So if they're in an investment account, we need to disclose they're in an investment account. If they're a gift, the gift's a big one, right? If it's a gift, you have to know you have to disclose it's a gift. The escrow company is going to want to have a gift letter signed that says precisely how much money of the gift is being given. I just had a closing where the buyers were getting $60,000 of gift between the grandfather and the mother, but the closing costs and their down payment wasn't $60,000. So what happened? In this case, escrow company is able to write a refund to them after closing. They'll send them a check for what they didn't use, which is great. So they get
Send
due
it
check.
back to the booking.
They're going to send it. In this case, they're going to send it to the buyer. Yeah. So super handy.
Nice.
Do they need help with closing costs from the seller? Luckily, we have shifted far, far away from this in the last year.
Totally.
But I tell you what, in 2019, almost every deal I saw had closing costs written
yeah.
from it. I don't know if the local lenders and this isn't this isn't something that is done nationwide. This is something that's very specific to the Portland market and it makes a lot of sense, but buyers would rather finance their closing costs by wrapping it into the loan and having the seller pay them, which they're essentially having the seller pay them, right? So the seller, when they're looking at the price, they see $500,000 and they see $10,000 in closing costs. In their mind, $490,000 is what they're thinking, right? And that's essentially what they're offering, even though their loan's going to be $500,000. So they're financing that $10,000 at probably a really, really favorable interest rate. It makes a lot of sense to do that, right? So all of our lenders went to this great workshop on it. The problem is it's a royal pain in the real estate market because nobody wants to deal with them. Your house has to appraise for the full purchase price, not the purchase price minus the closing costs. So there is some risk to the seller, especially if, let's say, you have a $500,000 house, it's now 510, and there's no other offers, just that one offer, and then you have to justify that price to the appraiser. The appraiser calls, hey, I noticed you're at 510. Was there multiple offers? No. Okay. He's like, I had questions if the house was even worth 500 to begin with, but you're the only people who want to pay that much for it, and you're paying more than asking. We're gonna have a problem come to the appraisal. So what do you do? So do you make an agreement ahead of time? That's what I would do. If I was a listing agent, I would say, in the event of a little appraisal, the appraisal is below the purchase price, buyer to contribute $10,000. The buyer shall, I used to have a great term written for it, but it was something along the lines of, for every dollar the appraisal is below the purchase price, seller shall contribute $1 from the buyer shall contribute $1 from the seller to closing costs up to $10,000. Something along, I can't remember what I said, but I was very eloquent. I was very, very eloquent. But you need to have a term like that in your pocket, probably. Something to.
I saw an offer come across where the seller was asking the buyer to pay their closing costs.
Yeah. That's just weird.
Right?
That's not usual.
Well,
No.
so what's the problem? Okay, I saw this term written the other day. It said seller to pay buyer's closing costs, or buyer to pay seller's closing costs.
Right.
What are the seller's closing costs?
Yeah. Oh, a lot, includes commission.
Yeah, the commissions.
Right.
And
Right.
it's all, and that's part of it. So like Kelly said, we're not dealing with closing costs right now on the seller paying the buyer side, but you have to word it a specific way when you do.
Yeah, so it has to be a specific number. I see people say up to, and I was in a class with a lawyer, and he said this: who decides up to what? Who decides up to 10,000? Like how much up to $10,000? Who
Yeah.
decides that?
You have to like specify exactly what type of costs they're paying.
Yeah. So you want another discussion to have with your clients and their lender. How much are the closing costs going to be? The lender's not going to know because they won't know the exact workup until the CD is delivered. But they'll figure, okay, it's going to be about $10,000. So like more than $10,000 or less than $10,000. Well, that's a discussion you want to have with your client, right? Like, so are you willing to maybe leave a little bit extra on the table and make sure that all your closing costs are covered? So you bring the least amount to closing? Or would you be better off making sure that you maximize the full amount you've asked for? And if it's a little bit short, you're going to bring that extra $500, $600, $700 of closing. So you want to have that discussion because they can make or break the deal, right? Because there's nothing worse than saying $10,000 of closing costs, and then the closing costs only $9,100, and then you're asking the seller, well, we'd like to get that $900 back. And they're like, no,
They don't have.
we don't have to. There's nowhere for it to go.
Well, it's even worse if what if their closing costs actually come in at like 7,
So it's like $3,000, right?
right? You just lost
Yeah.
your buyers $3,000 of their money
Yeah.
that they were anticipating having to be able to do, I don't know, some of the repairs or something,
Yeah.
right?
The other thing to think about, another discussion to have with closing costs is so many times repairs get turned into closing costs. So if you ask for the maximum amount right away, you have no room for repairs no room to take a credit in lieu of repairs.
That's right.
And that's kind of a weird game to play. It's hard to know, Again, you want to have a discussion with the clients about it, say, this is how a transaction could go. We're gonna do a home inspection where you may ask for repairs, or you may be more comfortable taking credit for repairs. What happens if we have no more closing costs that we can take? Because it's capped, if the sellers, you can get way more closing costs than what your client can actually probably use.
Right.
So I think you can get up to 6% of the purchase price in closing costs. But the part that helps your client today, the day after closing, is the minimizing the amount that they're bringing to closing, right? And so if that amount is $10,000, the lender's not going to let you take the other $10,000 and your $20,000 closing costs you negotiated. The lender's not going to let you take that home with you.
No.
So it could get rolled into buying the loan down or something like that. But that's not going to help your clients for a long time. Like if they were counting on that $10,000 to repair the crawl space, but now it's being amortized over the next 30 years, right? It's not a huge, it's going to take them forever to recoup that money, to make that repair. So conversation and strategy to talk to your client about, know the condition of the property, let them know, like, what would you rather do? Would you rather not be able to take the credit for repairs? Hopefully we get these repairs done, and in this market especially. Luckily, we're not seeing a lot of closing costs, but getting repairs done today is really hard because the contractors are so busy right now. They're getting a repair done in like a 3-week windows that we usually have, right? Next to impossible, depending on what the repair is. So closing costs are really important to maintain.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Did everybody get to that line?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. What type of inspections do they want on the home? So it says in the purchase agreement that you're going to specifically identify what the specific inspections are. And I've seen a lot of wording that may or may not wiggle around that by saying, sewer scope, radon testing, and any of the repairs recommended by the inspector. So what wins? What wins in that? Because one term is different than the other. Probably what's written wins because it's more specific to the situation. But I would want to be very, very clear and maybe even address that specific in lieu of, in place of, or this shall supersede any other term of the agreement or something. If you wanted to write any other inspections recommended by the appraiser. Why is that? Why do we have to identify inspections? Anybody have an idea? Anybody online want to know why we have to identify what inspections we're going to do?
Nope. Sorry.
Oh, I love
Right.
it. I love the participation. Thank you. The point behind it is that because there could be implications to the inspections that could affect the property and the value of the property and the seller's pocketbook. So in fact, a friend of mine called me about this the other day. He had done a home inspection. He had agreed in his offer that he had written. The buyers had agreed to ask for no repairs. That they were just doing the inspection for informational purposes only. They did a tank search. They pulled some soil samples, and the soil is really bad. There's a lot of oil in it, and he's got himself in a little bit of a pickle. How do we work our way around it? He had all kinds of ideas that I thought were terrible to do it. But the issue at hand is, regardless of what's going to happen, now those samples have to, because the contractor that pulled them is obligated to report them to the DEQ.
Yep.
So now the DEQ is going to know about them, and whether or not these people buy the house or not, somebody's going to hook for that repair, and it's probably going to be the seller, and they didn't even know that the repair was happening, right? So you've set them up, but what you're really doing is you're setting yourself up and you're setting your buyers up for trouble because they can come back and say, "Whoa, we never authorized that repair." When that inspection, we never authorized anybody to take a soil sample off our house. You didn't have the right to do that. Now you can pay for the cleanup. So, hot.
Best thing I think is the inspection addendum.
Yeah. Yep.
It has a checkbox for every type of inspection you want to do.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean you have to do it.
Yep.
But it's getting permission to do them all.
Yep. So there's that professional inspection addendum. Instead of putting in the 10 business, instead of using the first inspection protocol, there's an alternative inspection protocol that we'll go through. And in that, it directs you to use that addendum. And oftentimes, you'll see every single box checked. People are just used to seeing every box checked. I think you could probably sneak one by somebody and they wouldn't think two things about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Realtors don't like to do a ton of negotiating. So it's like price, closing date, occupancy, like there's like a handful of things that we negotiate. But the rest of the stuff just goes to the wayside, we just agree with.
So is it best to use that addendum like on an older home where
For sure.
you would run into those?
Yeah, I think so.
Like if it's a newer.
Yeah. Yeah, right. If it's a new home, it's so unlikely there's an oil tank on it. Could be, right?
Could be, yeah.
Could be like a lot division, and this is where the original home was, and there's a tank buried right there. Although it probably would have been found. It would probably would have been found through
Preparing the land.
Yeah,
Do it.
yeah, something probably would have come up on it, but
But you never know.
you never know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Home warranty is the next one.
Yep.
In this market, I would suggest not requesting one. I wouldn't put it on the agreement because it may look like you did request it for the seller to pay for it. So if you are going, if there is gonna be a home warranty, I would not wanna lose a deal over one. I would say that I will pay for it, or you will pay for it, buyer, but to keep it off the contract altogether. You can maybe later, as part of the home inspection, negotiate a home warranty, or like I said, you paid out your commission, or the buyer can pay for it, but I wouldn't suggest putting one on there. Some people love them, some people hate them. I'm indifferent to them. Yeah, you'll like. Is like if you were a Coldwell Banker or ERA or Better Homes and Garden or any one of their brands, they push those really hard because they have a warranty company there. And so they,
Is it common for agents to pay for
yeah,
the writers?
yeah, but just don't make a lot of pressure. Don't make a lot of promises about it. Like I'm always like, I've said this again, I say it every class, like I need people to make me look good. I don't think home warranty companies make you look great if you overbill them. So make sure that you aren't like, oh, they're the best thing ever. They're gonna fix everything. If your furnace goes down, they're gonna fix that. If this breaks, they're gonna fix that. They may or may not. They
Right.
may find a way not to fix it, because they're not in the fixing business, right? They're in the collecting the $500 business and paying out as little as they can for repairs. It's a business model, so know that. Yep. When do they want to move? When they want to close and move in, right? And we're seeing these are two separate dates now. We're seeing a lot of occupancy agreements. We're seeing a lot of occupancy agreements that are where there's no the buyers not receiving no rent from the seller. It's really common, and I would imagine it will continue to be common to use because we've gotten so used to using it. And it is really nice if you're a seller to not have to move out of the house until you have your money. And it makes it easier for you to shop for another home. It makes it easier for you to move. Just logistically speaking, it's really convenient. I'd expect it to go on and on, but make sure that your occupancy agreement is presented with your offer.
Yeah.
And if there's one that's gonna be added to it, make sure it's added ASAP, because there's so many terms on that besides just the rent amount that could make it so you don't actually have a meeting in the minds until that document is agreed. Because it's, as soon as the occupancy date changes, the document, the purchase agreement calls for that agreement to be added to the sale. So it's a mandatory add-on no matter what, and it needs to be complete and it needs to be signed at acceptance. Otherwise, I don't think, in my mind, you don't have an accepted offer. Okay.
Right.
Yep, because there's a bunch of terms still left in the air, right? And then we talked about this, saying what name do they want on the deed, right? If it's an LLC or something like that, if they're purchasing cash, or maybe they represent a company, or maybe they just want their full name in there, who knows?
I think the big issue that comes up a lot of times is when there's a husband and wife, and they're both originally purchasing it, and then maybe the lender says, oh, we gotta do it just the husband's name.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, we could add the wife after the fact.
Mhm.
So that actually happened to us last month. So
Mhm.
my partner, he was on the mortgage, not myself, but we're both on the deed.
Mhm.
But when it came down to signing,
Yeah.
they had me on the mortgage, but not on the deed.
Oh, that's messed
Oh,
up.
that,
Which is actually a big deal because
Yeah.
Yeah.
all they had
Oh,
to
it's a
do
huge
for the
deal.
mortgage was actually just reprint paperwork,
Mhm.
Yeah.
my name on it, but the deed was gonna delay it a while.
Yeah,
So it was kind of like, well, shit.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
And so now it's like, well, so now we're working on putting my name on the deed,
yeah,
which is easy after the fact, but so it doesn't delay. it.
Sometimes.
But do you have to pay to like then?
yeah,
So
there'll be a recording fee.
So
yeah,
that's what's frustrating, is like that wasn't our fault, but
Mm-hmm.
we had a whole conversation,
talk to your escrow officer.
just talk to them, say, hey, that was your fault, but it's not.
I bet you they recorded, yeah.
They should
I bet they don't charge you.
charge for
Yeah.
that.
Who was this?
We did it with WFG.
Yeah, so just call the escrow officer when it's time.
Yeah.
Or follow up with them, like, hey, we need to get, when's this gonna be done? It shouldn't take long.
No,
No,
it
it
shouldn't
shouldn't
take
take long at all, but it was.
It should be done
like
already.
closing.
It should be done already. Like, they should have done it the next day.
Yeah,
Well, they should have, but you're kind of, well, we'll do it later, but they should take initiative.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, I would get on them, for you especially, right? You're on the,
I paid half of everything.
yeah, like, you need to have the deed.
One of the things that I've seen in the past, though, when it comes to adding someone to the deed after the fact, that actually changes the ownership of the property, and some lenders have it in their writing that if the ownership changes, that loan could be due in full.
Yeah.
So
So
you
they
really
have
need
it
to
in
watch that.
writing, but whatever came to closing was not correct. They still had it emails that it's both our names. I don't know how to transfer over.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it was right that the loan was gonna be processed. It
Sure.
didn't
Yeah.
affect it. I imagine like you get remarried and then you want to add someone in.
Right, well, here's one, so we represent the buyer, this property just closed a week or so ago. And, a couple purchased the property in tenants in common, all right? Now, you don't need to know all this stuff, you don't need to know all the vesting types, we don't deal with that very often. But you two
Well, we
purchased
did.
you purchased a property, tenants in common.
Yeah.
If you were to get married, and this is what happened with this story, so this couple got married, but they never changed the vesting type. She passed away without a will. So the property went to her heir, which was her son. Okay, then her son passed away, and it went to his heir, which was his dad. The problem is, this wasn't his dad,
Yeah,
this is the stepdad, right? We talked about this, did we? So now the ex-father-in-law and the divorced husband is negotiating with the widowed husband about how much the property this guy owns that he can put down into.
that's good to know. Yeah,
So
right?
it was cost that guy a
Ownership is a
fortune.
big deal.
It was a big deal. I am sure it was a big deal. Yeah. So sorry for.
No, that was good.
Yeah.
Well, that's all part of the deed, right?
Right,
It's not just what their legal name is on the contract,
Exactly.
but who's legally allowed to be on the deed.
Mhm.
So if there's a loan and one of the parties is not on the loan, you need to talk to the lender and make sure that they're aware and it's okay for the other party to be on that deed after the fact, because title will just add it. But if the lender ever went and checked, and in their contract, it says that if the ownership was just this one person and the ownership changes, the loan is due in full.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to refi.
what's I dealt with that too, just getting divorced. His parents and us were on it. Apartment down below they lived in, it's like 2 years later, my name's still on that deed. I already didn't live there for 2 years, but it is what it is, until you sell it or you
Right.
finance.
That's
it.
right.
it make a difference if you live there or not.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Very upset. But anyway, that's the same thing, even if, you're trying to sell the house, you have to get everyone signing off.
Yeah.
and
That's right.
That person's technically.
Absolutely.
correct.
Not technically, they are.
They are.
Yeah.
It's not even technicality, it is just flat out you are.
I know.
Unless someone changed something otherwise. Unless there's a divorce decree that said otherwise.
That's it, yeah.
Okay, should we jump into the
We're
forms?
gonna go write up contracts. All right, so let me switch over, MLS.
Let's all write a deal on this. Again, just like we did last time.
Yeah, we'll walk through it a little bit more this time, I think.
Yeah.
Make
Should
it
we-
easy.
Should we cruise through the form first and then present
And then
the,
go, yeah,
yeah, let's let's hit the document first, and then we'll give them the property, and then get started.
Okay, now I gotta remember my login again. Zipformplus.com. Oh, I think that's what it is. That one? Woohoo, I did it, first try.
Good
That's
job.
pretty good, huh? All right, let's go into test on a buyer. I'll reuse the same one, so I don't have 50,000 properties in here, and my documents. Get rid of this one. Or you want to just let it sit?
Yeah, just go through this.
Do you want me to open up that one, or do you?
Yeah, it's
what did
okay.
I do?
We're just adding.
I moved it. I did something.
Oh,
Okay.
you dropped an archive.
All forms. Oh, wait. Do you want me to go through the all forms? I know you don't like the templates. I have templates. All right.
So I don't mind templates. I just
Starting out with REF. We need to get the residential sales agreement, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
What? I see your archive. So I'll let you drop it.
Oh, is that where I put it?
Yeah.
Here. Okay. And then, Kelly, what other forms do you want to do on this
Well,
one?
let's just start with this form, and then let's just go through this form once. Let's go through this form once,
Okay.
and then let them add it to do their offer, and
Okay.
then grade it afterwards. Because we'll just have a couple of, well, 40 grades, so let's just do that.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so we talked about this in the beginning. So the very top there, the final agency acknowledgement. So the first part there is where you're identifying yourself. This is you. This is your license number, which you guys all know how to find your license number. You all know by heart?
No.
You will. Some of you do, some of you don't. You'll learn it. I hope you learn it because you're writing it so often, right? Good to know it. This is your company right here. So this is where it says of Keller Williams Realty, Portland Premier, not KWPT, not, you could do Keller Williams, Portland Premier, that'd be okay.
We gotta check that.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Is that better? Sorry.
Okay. So Keller Williams is not sufficient. It needs to say Keller Williams Realty Portland Premier. That's our identified license name with the state of Oregon. That's what it should say. Then our license number right there. You put your phone number, could be your phone number, our office number, your email address, right? And then boom, buyer exclusively. Down here is the seller's agent's information in the same format that you did yours. So you'll need to figure out, you know how to find their license number. It's in the listing. It's in the listing, okay? Same with their company information. So you click the box for exclusively seller. Client's names go here under buyer. Seller's names go here. Do not auto-populate this form unless you want their names to be wrong. So if you don't, if you look at the listing agreement and it's not clear in the order in which their names appear, call the listing agent and find out their names, just so you're respectful when when they're reading their offer, the names are appearing as they should, as opposed to flip-flop. That's my pet peeve.
Yeah, usually
You
it's
can
the
always see it
last,
because it's capitals too, right?
it's always the last name first. And then it's usually the.
But
first
there's
name,
multiple
and
owners,
then
it gets all jumbled up.
That's when it gets
Yeah,
jumbled.
yeah. So this would be the Gene F. Moore Trust.
And yeah, this is a
CE.
trust account.
Yep.
Yep. So you definitely want to find out what's the seller's name, how should it
Right.
be on there?
Okay, so when so this is an auto-populated form from this is gonna be auto-populated from here. This is gonna auto-populate this, right? So price, property description, buyer, Mr. and Mrs. such and such, offer to purchase from Mr. and Mr. such and such. The following describes real property here and after the property situated in the state of Oregon, county of Liza. And then line 35 here will be the address. And then at line 36, I don't necessarily need to see the legal description, but I would love to see the tax ID number. So you're able to identify the property by two separate ways. There could be multiple tax ID numbers if you're dealing with a well, it could be just a residential property, but in a rural property, it could be multiple tax lots,
Right.
multiple tax ID numbers. So you want to make sure that when you write an offer, you're not just purchasing the one lot, you're purchasing the entire package of lots to be purchased, because that'd be embarrassing to pay $2 million for 20 acres and only get 5 at closing, right?
No.
Okay, line 39 is going to be the purchase price. Next is the earnest money amount. Could be anything. And then next line C here would be if there's additional earnest money to be deposited later, rarely used.
Typically new construction.
Could be new construction, could be, it could be something where you've if there's a hurdle, like if there's a term that you need to cross first. So let's say you're gonna do a really exhaustive inspection on
Yeah.
something, and after inspections are over, you're gonna deposit more earnest money. Very rare, we don't use it very often, but that would be an application for that. And then the balance closing here, line D, is what the total loan amount would be. So it's, the earnest money, I'm sorry. This is the remainder of the down payment, I apologize.
Yeah.
So if they're putting 20% down on $650,000, that is $130,000. And so it'd be 1,115.
Thank you.
11500. And then this line here, we don't use this one ever, contract. We rarely ever use a contract anymore. In 21 years of selling real estate, I've never represented a client who's purchased anything under contract. So I've always checked the box deed, and then the final loan amount is represented on E.
Make sure those numbers match up what the lender tells you they're doing.
Right. You want to make sure you had discussions with the lender, or at least believe your clients that they know what they're talking about.
Well, you should have a new pre-approval that has exactly what their offer is,
Right.
right?
Yep. All right, next page. So, fixtures, controls, keys, all fixtures and essential, this is important. All fixtures and because this is one definition, right? And I could show you 12 different definitions. All fixtures and essential related equipment, example, remote controls, smart home features, and all keys related to the property, including mailbox, outbuildings, etc., are to be left upon the property. Fixtures shall include, but not limited to, built-in appliances, attached floor coverings, drapery rods and curtain rods, window and door screens, storm doors and windows, system fixtures, irrigation, plumbing, ventilation, cooling and heating, water heaters, attached electrical light and bathroom fixtures, light bulbs, fluorescent lamps, window blinds, awnings, fences, all planted shrubs, plants and trees, except is where you would put, like if there's a family chandelier that the buyer wanted to take with them and your clients don't care about it, right? That's where that would go. So these are all things that would not stay with the house that otherwise should stay with the house. Number 3, personal property. Only the following personal property in as-is condition and at no stated value is included. Why does it say at no stated value? Because we're purchasing real property.
Yep.
It's not an auto loan, right?
It's not a hot tub loan.
It's not a hot tub loan. It's not a solar panel loan. We're not using our Visa to purchase this. The lenders do not want to be the proud owner of a piece of art. So. Okay.
So you list the things that they're taking, or
The things that you want to keep, that your
Oh,
buyers
so
want to keep.
like,
That's where your
there's a
refrigerator would
table.
go in, or like, right, there's a table that you think they want, or whatever it was like if let's say you're buying a place at the beach and it's a vacation rental, all the furnitures are gonna stay,
Yeah.
right? That's where you would put that term. But mostly you're gonna be writing refrigerator, washer and dryer as seen on the property on such and such date.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, balance of the purchase price. Buyer represents a buyer has liquid and available funds for earnest money deposit and down payment. And if in all cash transaction, the full purchase price sufficient to close, notice that close is capitalized, close the transaction described herein, and is not relying upon any contingent source of funds except from loans, gifts, sale, or closing of, notice how this closing is lowercase, and this close is uppercase, because this one pertains to this sale, while this one pertains to another sale. Does that make sense? Okay, sale or closing of a property, 401k disbursements, except as follows. So this is where you would list the contingent source of funds. So if they were to gain their down payment from the close of their house, you would list it there. If they're getting it from their 401k, you would list it there. If they're getting gift funds from mom and dad and sister and brother, they're listed there.
So we have a question back on personal property. Anna asks, can I write in personal property that the staging furniture is not staying with the real property? I would say that would need to be in the listing, right?
That it is not staying, right?
Yes,
So no, you wouldn't need to write that it's not staying because it's
furniture.
furniture.
Nothing should be attached.
personal property.
It's staged.
Yeah, it's personal property.
You could put in the listing that the home is staged, right? Furniture or staging furniture or something like that.
Yeah, probably, but
To make sure that they don't ask for it.
Mhm, mhm.
Or
It's
you
always pretty
answer-
obvious.
Or you answer it no.
Yeah, it's always pretty obvious. I think it's always pretty obvious that
Yeah.
if it's been staged or not staged with that thing, it's just. Okay, if this was an all cash transaction, we would be addressing section A here, so 4A, this is an all cash transaction. Buyer to provide verification of readily available funds as follows. And so the attached to verification here, that could be in the form of like a purchase agreement for, if like, let's say all their money is coming from the sale of a property that hasn't yet closed, then that may be, that the proof may be that purchase
That
agreement.
right?
Or the closing settlement statement or something along those lines, estimated settlement statement.
Yeah.
It could be a letter from the banker. It could be, I've seen just like photocopies of their ATM printouts, right? But whatever it is, your client has to agree to it. They have 5 business days to accept it or not accept it. Now, I thought about this recently. It would be a really interesting thing to challenge. Like if you accepted a cash offer and they gave you their proof of funds, and buyer will provide seller with a verification within blank business days after signing is accepted, or I believe, hold on.
The seller may notify the buyer, right?
Yeah, seller will notify buyer in writing if they sign or accept it. And so what if the seller doesn't accept the proof of funds? Where does that leave us? I've always thought that'd be because it doesn't really say how
It's on there now.
is it saying what we,
Yeah, in the black.
okay, down below.
If the seller fails to provide that unconditional disapproval, then they're accepting it.
But I'm thinking about what if they do they disapprove it?
If they disapprove it,
So like
upon
what
such
if,
disapproval, all earnest money refunded to the buyer and the transaction terminated.
I've never seen anybody use this, but what if you got a better offer?
Right.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, you just disapprove it and then you get.
And then you got a better offer.
Certainly could try. And now, how that would hold up, I don't know.
Yeah, right? What if it's valid cat? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, don't be that agent.
Yeah.
You know, I need to tell you what we do.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, if you do run into that, go to Kelly.
So-
Since he brought it up.
right. So it's something you should know, right? Because your client, you may have a client that reads that.
So the
And you
seller,
want to be able to explain to them how that works. We don't know is the answer.
so the
it's-
seller can back out within 5 days.
They unconditionally disapprove of the,
Well, no, the buyer has to provide that within 5 days. The seller has 2 days to disapprove
Mhm.
the
But
funds.
if at that time, another offer comes in and it's better, all they have to do is now we disapprove of that cash. Or stuff those documents.
yeah.
But would that hold up? What if the buyer comes and says, what was wrong with it? What's disapproving of
Right.
it?
So I think it would only work if they did not produce the source of funds along with the offer, because there's an or here. So, buyer will provide, so it's like buyers attach a copy of the verification with the submission of this agreement to seller, period. I don't know, it might. It might still play, it's
If they
super,
verify.
it's super
exactly the
sketchy, for
offer
sure.
They've accepted.
it's super sketchy, like, this would be, talk to your attorney. That would be my advice, talk to your attorney before pulling off.
Before it's saying.
Yeah.
It's terminated.
I'll
Yeah.
ask, my partner's a real estate attorney, so I'll
No, it's
show them
perfect.
this, and
Yeah.
I'll say, hey, what do you?
It'd be interesting to see, I mean, I bet you we could get 10 different people, 10 different opinions on that
Well,
too.
yeah, because what if they gave you valid
Yeah.
cash
So,
verification?
right, but what is it, what's valid?
Right, in whose mind?
Yeah, so there probably needs to be, there's probably, at some point, there's probably gonna be a whole other paragraph in this agreement that deals with that. All right, so let's move on, so they're not, it's not cash, let's say if it's gonna be a loan, then we're checking the appropriate box, conventional, FHA, federal VA, shall or shall not agree to pay the buyer's non-allowable VA fees, I don't never notice how either checking the box affected the deal.
I think they have to regardless, right?
Yeah, I think so, but it's usually not that big a deal.
No.
And then other would be like if they're getting a jumbo loan or if they're getting hard money financing. So I see a lot of people, you see a lot of it with investors who are buying and selling properties a lot. Well, they'll have a hard money lender and let's say you're representing one of these people and they'll want to have their offer be cash because they really want everybody to think it's cash because they're going to pay with cash, but they're still
Right.
having a loan, right? So if you put cash, one, they're misrepresenting their terms, right? Even if they say hard money loan,
It's still a loan.
it's still a loan, right? And then the second be, why would you want to lose all of the rest of this, right? There's a lot of great stuff in the buyer's favor down below that cash buyers don't get, right? So all this other stuff lines up great for a buyer purchasing with a loan because there's all kinds of outs should they not qualify. So if your hard money lender decides that he's not going to give you any more money, then you're out, right? If you're just saying it's cash. So I would always call my hard money, I always call it a loan. Okay, 5.1 is where we deal with the contingencies, and this is super duper important. This is one of the most important clauses in the entire contract here, so you should know 5.1 really well. If buyer is financing any portion of the purchase price, then this transaction is subject to the following financial contingencies. 1, buyer and the property. Notice the capital P because it is applying to this property. To qualify for the loan from lender, capitalized as well. Lender's appraisal shall not be less than the purchase price and other. And so if there was another financial contingency like the sale of the property, it would be right to put it there. Sometimes people will get slick and try to just put it in up at the contingent source of funds, like somebody's gonna miss it. I always think that's slimy when I see that. I always like, hey, thank you for telling me you're a slime ball, I appreciate it. I'm not tricked. I read over the offer before I present it to my client, and it would be right there as well. If you were going to do appraisal gap coverage, you could put it in here. Let's say you're just going to waive the appraisal altogether. This would be a great place to say this sale is not contingent upon lender's appraised value not being less than the purchase price. It's a double negative, not, but that would be the point. Okay. Step 5.2, this is a follow-up, very, very important. If buyer receives actual notification from the lender that any financial contingency identified above have failed or otherwise cannot occur, buyer shall promptly notify seller and all parties shall have blank business days following the date of buyer's notification to seller to either terminate this transaction by signing OREA 057, the termination agreement, and or such other similar form as provided by escrow, or B, reaching a written mutual agreement upon such sales and terms that will permit this transaction to close. And B used to happen a lot more than A. B would be like if the appraisal came back short, usually party would agree to bring some in, seller would agree to reduce the purchase price by a little bit.
Yeah.
Meet in the middle, or let's say, oh my gosh, I can't afford to buy the house at this price. If it was just $5,000 cheaper, I could afford to buy it. That'd be a situation where the seller might be like, look, we're already this far into it, okay? Like, I don't want to do this, but I'm gonna do it, makes sense to do it.
I don't want to start over.
Don't want to start over. But if it doesn't, after 2 business days, what happens? Terminates on its own. Deal's dead. So don't sleep on that 2 business days. Because otherwise it terminates.
Going on that note, so like in the market now, especially to put your house back on the market or offer pending is like red flags.
Yeah,
Is that kind of
any
like-
market. Yeah,
So
any
if I
market.
had a seller, listing agent, side, I kind of advise my clients, say, you know, if we did this, it's better because you
Oh,
might
yeah.
actually get less.
It's the conversation I always have,
Right.
with my clients around inspections or a situation like this, where we're facing a sale fail, but we have a cure in hand, it just costs them something. I always just have the conversation, look, there's generally a price to pay for going back on the market. These people are gonna call me and wanna know why it didn't sell, because it appraised low, well, that's not a great thing, right? Because we couldn't come to terms on inspections, well, that can come off real bad, so you better have a good reason why, like the buyer was super unreasonable, they asked us for, you know, for ridiculous things, and you have a list of the ridiculous things they asked, like, that's stuff you can work around, but those are just the people you get to talk to who wonder why, who call and ask you. There's all those people that saw it come and go and make their own mind up about what it is, and who knows what's the cost of them not coming back to purchase the property
I've
next time.
seen a lot of listings lately where houses come back on the market and they put in a private remarks,
Yeah.
you know, some explanation.
Mhm.
Yep.
why.
Fire cold feet,
Mhm. Yep.
whatever it is, and you can do that, but some buyers are gonna automatically think, oh, well, now I can write a low offer.
Would you go, if you had backup offers, and let's say it's 2 days, right? Would you start
First
calling
phone call.
backup offers, saying, okay, let's just see if they haven't bought another house and they're willing to still be a backup offer and it works out, like, is that still risky, like doing?
I had, so I had a house sell. It was really weird. It was a few summers ago, and all of a sudden it was just a weird weekend where things weren't really hot. It was a cute little house in Southwest Portland. It was really inexpensive. It was old and vintage inside, and we were really surprised that it didn't get a bunch of offers on it. We just took one. And then as time went on, the phone started ringing about it. People had questions. They wanted to know if we could get this, they would think about a house. And it's like, well, let's just see what happens. Inspection comes, the sewer line it's not broke, it's not just broken, there's a gap where the pipe goes from here to here and it's just dirt in between. So it's just sewer spilling into the ground, right?
Lovely.
Yeah, lovely. And so the buyer was asking, well, will you fix this? In the meantime, my phone's ringing about people wanting to buy it. So what I did was I said, okay, we'll accept this backup offer, but there'll be no inspections. You're going to waive your seller's property disclosure, the right to receive a property disclosure statement before they go into contract, right? So that's a thing. And then I think we left the lead-based paint thing alone, but we had really like leveraged the other party, so they had like very few outs to purchase a property. So we had that in our hand while we were negotiating with the other party. So I told the other party, we're not fixing it. I know it's gross, and he was mad. He was like, I can't believe you're not fixing this. I've never seen no one not fix this. It's like, and I didn't want to tell him they had a backup offer, because the backup offer is like for $10,000 more. So not only do we have to repair, it was like $10,000 more. So we wanted him to back out of that deal so we could get the other people in. Well, I just said, no, we're not doing it. I think he figured it out. He must have figured out we had a backup offer. And so they accepted it begrudgingly to move forward. But yes, as soon as there's trouble and you have backup offers, get on the phone, because those people are out looking at properties still, right?
Yep, let
They
them
don't-
know you have a deal that's iffy.
Yeah. What do you guys
and
still
waiting on
in?
negotiation for something.
Yeah. It can change how
Are
you
you still
negotiate.
interested?
Mhm.
That $4.1 million house that I toured, that agent like called me after I got back in contract on the whole house.
Yeah,
And he was like, you got a backup offer? And I was like, too late.
yeah, no.
But I was like, oh.
Who did the backup offer benefit the most? The buyer, the seller? I mean, they're not super binding is the thing. Like somebody has to agree to be slid back in, so the buyer has to agree to go into that position. I think they benefit the buyer way more than the seller. I mean, it's the seller, it's a nice feeling going, you have a backup offer, but in reality, they could be on the phone being like, oh yeah, we'll move forward. As soon as they sale, feel like, okay, yeah, we're moving forward, but now we want this. Otherwise, we're not gonna move forward. Then you kind of left there. Yeah. All right, let's keep moving along here. What time?
Can I say something real
Yeah,
fast?
please.
One of my pet peeves, my biggest pet peeves, is when agents don't actually fill in the number 2 here and just leave it at this. I call that lazy agents.
Yeah.
Don't be a lazy agent. Fill in every single thing, and if it doesn't apply, NA.
But I think actually, I prefer no other.
No
Because there's
other.
word other, right? No other.
Right, no other.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But let's
Answer
finish it.
everything.
Yeah. answer the question. Now
Don't-
down,
Cause anyone
now,
can write it in.
right, so is it 3 days? Could be different than 3 days, but
Yeah,
3
you can
days.
change it,
Right?
but don't leave it empty.
Yeah, don't leave it empty for sure. The only ones I would say to leave empty would be, I wouldn't like this here, like leave these empty, because we're not dealing with this first part of the agreement. So filling in, it isn't applied. We're not checking a box here or here usually, and this
Right.
spot is, so, and it doesn't take a letter, so I would just leave it as
When
is.
would you change it to like 4 days or like any reason?
I don't, you could, if you think.
You could do less days, you could do more
Yeah,
days.
so let's go back up and just read, let's like, so if they need more time to make a loan application, right? Then that's where you
If
might go
people
5
are
days.
maybe
or-
out of the country,
Right.
or, right,
If I'm the listing agent, I see that number's not 3, I'm like, what?
Right, if it's more, then just while you're reviewing it.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but there are
Uh,
times that you might need to.
Another really important part of this section right here, 5.3, buyer makes the following representation to seller. 1, buyer's complete loan application as hereinafter defined shall be submitted to the lender who provided the pre-approval letter,
Mhm.
right? So no switching lenders without permission from the seller.
Yep, cause it states that on
Yeah.
here. Where's that at?
What's that?
Doesn't it state on here if they want to change the lender, they already
Yep.
did that,
Yes, it does say that. It says down here.
right here,
Yep.
right,
Um,
yeah.
But the buyer can switch lenders later if something happens or no?
They have to get permission.
You still
So-
need permission,
Okay.
yeah, without,
gets-
right here, seller's written consent.
And I've seen people do it and not think about it. And in fact, we have an earnest money dispute going on right now where that's gonna be a huge factor in us winning the $19,000 earnest money. Not us, but our client. It's because they switched lenders, they didn't tell us.
That's also a point that the seller can pull your listing or your buyer's offer and take a different offer, right? Because you switch lenders on them.
Mhm.
So make sure everything, you always gotta remember, whatever they're doing, you try to do everything that you can in the original agreement, because any
Stay, yeah.
changes.
Stay within the framework of the original agreement as much as possible, right? And then again, use the words in the original agreement as much as possible.
Don't miss
But let's keep going down. So additional provisions, like if there's gonna be appraisal gap, if you're using an appraisal addendum, I would mention it here and in 5.1. If you're using escalation clause, I would use it here and additional provisions later. Because you're also gonna, part of what we're doing is marketing our offer as well, so we wanna make sure these addendums don't get missed. Okay, but that, yeah, closing costs would be, seller to contribute $5,000 towards buyer's prepaid lender expenses and closing costs would go there if that's something you wanted to do.
Only the finance.
You would only waive the appraisal if
You don't have to waive it because it's already waived. So
There is
if you go
no,
back
you're.
up,
You would waive the appraisal.
if you go back up
Cash.
to, so
right here.
is it,
Right.
this is all cash transaction. Now go back down to 5.1. 5.1 says if buyer is financing any portion of this purchase price. So if buyers, so that's the only time the appraisal comes into terms.
Yep.
So a cash sale is not contingent upon an appraisal in any way.
So if
Unless
they
it's
want
written
an
to be.
appraisal and a cash offer, you're gonna have to write that in.
Then you're gonna have to come down to additional provisions and you'll probably go word for word. Some of whatever appraisal, you'll probably have to go 5.1, you'll have to say this property, the sale is contingent upon, upon lender's appraisal not being less than the purchase price. And then you'd have to tie in you'd probably tie in this whole paragraph right here.
When would you waive the appraisal?
Like if you have a lot of cash and it's a competitive offer and they have a lot of cash to cover the difference. So they're confident that the purchase price is gonna be close enough, the purchase price and appraisal value are close enough
Okay.
that you have enough cash to bring the purchase.
If you're financing part of it, this is the lender gonna require.
The lender's still gonna require it, right? It's just not you're not making the sale contingent upon
You'll bring all the cash needed.
it. Whatever is necessary, you'll bring in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which are you seeing that? Like now, especially when people are like, oh, I offer 100 grand over. And it comes in.
Yeah,
100 grand less, the appraisal.
and you
Paying
have,
$100,000.
you have to have the money, right?
Yeah.
Yep, you have to have the cash to do it. But you wanna make sure that you're very specific, because you don't wanna say, because the property still has to qualify, so it could be some issue with the property that would go along with it, like, let's say the appraiser comes out and is like, oh my god, that roof it's terrible, like, that roof's not gonna make it, or that siding looks bad, or whatever it is, that's a whole nother, that's separate from the appraised value, so that's a whole separate term.
Underwriting conditions.
Yeah. Title insurance, we all know what title insurance is because we went through
All 3 classes.
we had 3 classes from escrow companies talking about title insurance. But the things that would approve, would may be in here that are important would be like an easement that you didn't know about. CCNRs.
Yeah.
And it's not, just because it's not part of an HOA doesn't mean there's not CCNRs, right?
CCNRs could say that they can't have a business in that
Yeah.
property.
Or a
They're wanting
dog.
to do a home business out of there.
Mhm. Or no Rottweilers, no pit bulls.
Yeah,
Your clients have Rottweilers and pit bulls, or a dog, no dog that weighs more than 40 pounds or 30 pounds. That's really common in like in a condo building. The number of pets could be in there.
So they should get this report in 5 days.
Mhm,
They should know.
yeah, so what happens when you send your purchase and sales agreement off to the escrow office, they send out the preliminary title report, and who gets it? You get it, the selling agent gets it, your buyer gets it, the seller gets it. But then I always suggest that even when you get it, you forward that as well to your client to make sure, hey, we received this, we have 5 days to review it. And they have 5 days to review it from the time that you receive it. You receive it
Everything starts when
as
you
the
receive it.
agent.
It says later in definitions that a delivery to you is like delivering to your client.
Yeah, so you need to make sure that you are on top of that, especially if there's something in there and they have 1 day to review. If they forget
Let's
to
say, yeah,
send it,
you get somehow title company got the wrong email address.
trouble.
Trouble. So this is the contingency section. There's contingencies in here and how to navigate them. This is very rarely used, but I've seen people try to use it to get out. And usually it's after the fact and it doesn't work great. Okay, number 10 is inspection. So this is a really the most common contingencies we use. So this contingency, and if you go down below, this one here, alternative, sorry, right here, alternative.
Yeah.
The language and the operating are very similar. It's just one has boxes that you can check for specific repair items. The other is being listed up above here. But the key parts of this, there's 3 things you need to take away, 2 big things, well, 3 things you need to take away. 1, the end of the inspection period. Do not miss this date. It's the most important date that you have in your entire transaction. Do not let that time go by without having discussions about your client. Make sure they know it. Everybody needs to know it. Have a reminder set on your phone. Never miss this date. It's really embarrassing. It can be really costly to you if you do. 2, the buyer may unconditionally disapprove of the inspection report, which means 2 things. 1, they can walk away for no reason whatsoever without any condition. They don't have to say why. They just unconditionally disapprove. It's over. And that's for the seller and the buyer's benefit. That way the seller doesn't have to know why, so they don't have to disclose later. And that way the buyer really has a lot of levity to get in and out of that deal for what they want. The other half of the contingent of it being unconditional is you can't say buyer, let's all these repairs or buyer terminates. Can't do that, right? So it has to be 2 separate addendums. So one addendum would announce your repair requests. And then as you got closer to the deadline, or as you decide that the buyers decide they didn't want to buy, then you send the termination agreement over separately. Okay. And then the last one is, and this is super duper important. Make sure you read this because this is like you need to understand and read this backwards and forwards, right? But the entire document is super important, but this one especially, you may not send over any part of the inspection report without written request from the seller's agent. Okay, so if they say send that over, say send that to me in a text or send that to me in an email, and I'll happily send it over to you. And they can ask for specific pages of the inspection report. Okay, so they send me the part that addresses this single item, or they can ask for the entire report. It's up to them if they want to or not, but you may not provide it ahead of time. If you do, you're in breach contract.
and you say, if they're like, send me over the entire report, you say, well, I'll send you only. the things
No, you
that
have to send the
you
entire-
send me.
Yep, you have to send the entire thing, if they want the entire thing. If they want just part, then you send just part, whatever, this is where the seller's agent is driving that delivery. And then upon termination, they can ask for the whole thing, and you have to send it then too. I've actually been in a deal where, like, they wouldn't sign the earnest money release until we sent the inspection report over. This is the most childish thing ever, but we sent it over. I was like, just to be like, I was like, no. Just to be difficult, I was like, no, you first. I eventually kidded, but I had like, you know, a little bit of fun.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
Our inspection period is up tomorrow.
Yeah,
And I still haven't gotten anything from them, but I know that they.
from the seller
From.
and from the buyer.
buyer.
Mhm.
I haven't gotten their repair addendum yet.
Right.
But I know that there was mold in the attic found and, the sewer scope failed.
Mhm.
which I-
Right.
I haven't gotten any requests yet, so
Mhm.
you have to negotiate by the 10 days.
Yep,
Yeah,
by 5 p.m.
Or they
All
should-
negotiations are done.
they're
And
holding.
if they don't have it done, then they bought the property as is. Yeah,
So I'm just.
but it's not your, since you're representing the
Kelly, can you
seller.
repeat that, please?
Yeah, so it says here, let's just read it. It says right here, okay, buyer may notify seller in writing of buyer's unconditional disapproval of the property based on any inspection report in which all earnest money deposit shall probably be refunded and this transaction will be terminated. If buyer fails to provide seller with written unconditional disapproval of any inspection report by 5 p.m. on the final day of the inspection period, buyer shall be deemed to have accepted the condition of the property, which means everything has to be negotiated by 5 p.m. or subsequent extension.
So even the seller has to approve.
Yeah, the seller, you're right, the seller, just
You don't-
delivery,
You don't want to wait till last minute.
as a buyer's agent, you don't want to wait till the last minute, right? Because
No.
you're painting everybody in a corner and you're getting everybody stressed out. Not you, but the
What-
buyer's agent's getting everybody stressed out.
Because what if they back out now at last minute? Because I feel like with those two things, I feel like they would want to negotiate repairs, right?
Mhm.
So it's like.
So what you would probably do is if you get it, I mean, one, you've already had discussions with your seller about it. So when you get it, you would say, look, these are options. We can let it expire, hoping they don't terminate. We could respond really quickly, or we could ask for an or we could propose an extension.
Right.
So that everybody has chance to make a good decision.
Kids or
Yeah.
whatever.
My
But-
only thought is they were picking up grade on this morning, so maybe.
That's probably why.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll come in.
That's probably why. So, right, and your inspection period was pretty short on that one? Was
No, it was a full 10 days.
full 10 days, so that's just mismanagement by them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you automatically just say, we want extension right away? That's-
No, I wouldn't, no, because it's leverage, you have a little bit of leverage, right? It's a buy, once the seller's market,
Because the sellers don't have to accept it.
right, it's a seller's market, and so you have a little bit of leverage. I would, as a seller's agent, I'd never once pick up the phone and say,
Hey,
Hey,
where's your buyer?
hey, where's that addendum? Because they were like, we weren't gonna write one, but yeah, we'll have it to you over in a minute, you know? Like, they may not be writing it. They're probably waiting for that right now. Yeah, which is just mismanagement of the time, I think, by them.
Yes.
That's why the first thing you do, once you get accepted offer, pick up the phone, get your inspection scheduled. Because you don't want to, you have more time to negotiate, which is good, right?
Yeah,
You
which
can,
she did, like,
you can be-
Like a week out.
right,
I couldn't get anything sooner, she said.
right, you could be, they didn't try hard enough. Like, you could be more brazen in your request if you have more time to negotiate. Like, you could say, you could throw the kitchen sink at them, right? And they're like, oh my God, we're never doing all this stuff. Well, how about this? No. Well, how about this? No. Well, how about a $5,000 credit? Okay, right? Like, that's, as a representing a buyer, that's how that usually could go. So if you have time to do it, if you don't have time, then this is what it is. Okay. Lead-based pay contingency, all right? So, this is it's a federal law, right? So we can't really make a lot of adjustments. We can adjust the timeline is the only adjustment we can make to anything that's written on this, right? So it says here that we have 10 business days, I believe. But that number can change. But the buyer is entitled to receive the lead-based paint addendum and the EPA addendum. And it says right here that they will be delivered together. So right here, the lead-based paint disclosure addendum, together with the EPA pamphlet entitled Protect Your Family from Lead-Based Paint in Your Home. So you wanna make sure those two things are coupled together and sent to your buyer. That way, that timeline is officially begun, that's what they're entitled by the law, by federal law to get, right? So that's a pretty big deal. Like, we're gonna talk about the seller's property disclosure here in a minute, but this is federal law, right? So federal law, even though it says arbitration mediation later on in the agreement about how we're gonna handle disputes, I think a dispute on this probably goes to federal court. Could go to federal court, which is a big deal difference in going to arbitration mediation. All right.
Right.
So send them together and they have a review period, and that review period time can be negotiated to change. But it's like right now, it's a 10 calendar day and it can be adjusted. The law allows for it to be adjusted, but there is a time period. You can't waive that right. It is what it is. I mean, I think the buyer can waive it. I just don't know if it actually changes the timeline. I think it does change the timeline. They can waive it in the addendum, but they can't be forced to waive it. Does that make sense? Like, they have to agree to waive it. Otherwise, it's 10 days.
Yeah.
Okay. So if there's a well or septic system, you're gonna check a box here, and it's gonna trigger these addendums: the septic on-site sewage addendum, the private well addendum, and then those get filled out accordingly. Property disclosure statement. So once you, as a buyer's agent, receive that seller's property disclosure statement, the clock starts ticking. So your clients have 5 business days to revoke their offer from the time they receive it. If it's a questionnaire, if they're claiming the exemption and they have a legal right to the exemption, you can argue that you still have that same 5-day period. There's different opinions on the law on that. Nobody knows the truth. So it's whatever the arbitrator would decide. And that would probably go to arbitration because that's not federal law, it's Oregon law. Maybe you get the state court, but I don't be surprised. Okay. Are we gonna get through this? Am I going too long?
That's all right. Next time we'll write contracts.
Yes, okay. So this is a really, really important part of the agreement. We need to identify, again, if it's on public sewer, septic, or on-site sewage system, public water, private well, or like it's from a spring or something. So we're going through this, we're talking about making sure we use the property for its legal purposes. But to me, the most important part of this is 14.4. All electrical wiring, heating, cooling, plumbing, irrigation equipment, and the systems, and the balance of the property, including the yard, will be in substantially the present condition at the time buyer is entitled to possession. Possession, not closing, possession, okay?
Covers them on that.
Yep, that's super important, because otherwise, that's what stops us from bringing houses down and still having to pay a bunch of money for them. And then also, if the yard's crap when you get it,
They took care of it and you get possession after close and then they let it go to
Yeah.
crap.
Yep. Or as soon as they got an offer accepted, they stop caring about what the property looked like. Yeah, so that's your stick for that. And I usually put no exceptions in here. If you were to have an exception, it's probably like a commercial deal or like some sort of land deal, something where it would waive some of these things. It's very rare that you'd ever be waiving. I've never waived one of these. I always put no exceptions in here though, because it says exceptions to lines 1 through 9R, and if it says exceptions, I say no exceptions.
If they're buying an old property that has land that could be subdivided and it's subject to them doing the investigation to see if they actually can subdivide it.
Would that apply here? I don't think so. I think that would be a whole
Additional
separate addendum.
provisions, right?
That'd be a whole separate addendum. And
Yeah.
that'd be a whole separate addendum that address that. Or you would somehow tie it into the home inspection period.
We need to read these.
Yeah, these are just boilerplate tax statements.
FERPA,
FERPTA, we all know FERPTA.
there's a whole other form for it.
Yeah, FERPTA, foreign investment, real estate, I can't remember what it stands for. Anyways, foreign people have to pay taxes on
Real
real
Estate
estate.
Property Tax Act.
Yep, so foreign people have to pay taxes on their property differently than we pay taxes on our property as US citizens.
Yeah.
Okay, miscellaneous, so these are really important. So if it's in the townhome plan community homeowners association, then you must check yes, and you must use the OREF 024 Townhome Plan Community Homeowners Association Addendum, which regulates the reviewing of the financial forms and the rules of the HOA, which is super duper important on any condo or townhome but could be important for,
Or some
For a property.
communities that have pools and everything else.
yeah, like if he has a
right?
pool, right? A pool or a big clubhouse, and what if it's gonna be a big assessment coming up because the pool needs to be redone? And there's only 10 homes in the community that share the pool, so everybody's gonna split that by like $10,000 to put in a new pool or something, right? That'd be really important to know. So that's why you would review that. Alarm system, it says, there's something, I read something that said like an alarm system was definitely a fixture. But nowadays, the alarm system's kind of like they're like just sitting on a like bookshelf or something, right? They're really not as installed as they used to be. I think that this is kind of an old part of the agreement. I wish it was gone, but and it's not really, or I wish there was something to RMLS that was a mandatory yes/no answer, so that you knew if there's an alarm system and you knew if it was owned or not owned.
Right, because
Right,
that's what you have
because
to
who
know.
knows, right? So I almost always check unknown because I just don't want to.
You don't know.
Just someone will tell me.
And then you just ask the buyers if there is one, do you want to
Yeah.
assume the lease?
Unless your clients have told you that it's like a really germane thing to them to find a home with a security alarm. If that was the case, you would before you even showed the house probably they had one. But for me, I just leave that one. I just go unknown every time. Smoke detectors. So in their list, this is an RMLS listing. They agree to have smoke detectors installed already. They never do. They always wait till the last minute. But if you wait 15 days, the appraiser's probably there within the 15th day, and he sees that they're not in compliance with the Oregon law, and now he has to charge them $200 back. Your buyer's $200 more to come back out and view it for the second time. So I've been using 8 days here, which is 2 less than our inspection period. That seems like a good number to me.
A good listing agent will make sure all of your listings have it in there prior to going live,
Mhm.
right? Then we don't have to worry about that.
Mhm.
Done, check.
Or at least I would, as a listing agent, at least want to make sure my clients know they have to have it. Because no one's gonna be looking at no one's going around looking at the house like, hold on, this carbon monoxide is 16 feet away in that bedroom. Like nobody does. So,
So you changed that from 15 days.
what's that?
You said you changed that from 15 days.
I like 8. I want
Get
2
it
days,
within
at
your
least 2 days less than my
inspection.
inspection period. I want it done before the inspection period. Or at least I want them to agree to done it before.
Yeah.
Because that way, when it comes back and the appraiser says it's not done, I'd be like, what the heck? Like my people are gonna pay $200? Like I'd make a big stink about it.
Yeah.
I don't know if we gain anything about it, but I'd certainly make a stink about it.
Smart home.
Smart home features, I always check unknown on this one, just because I'm not sure. But by checking unknown, I put the onus onto the seller's agent to declare and seller declare what the smart home features are. These are starting to cycle out, which is kind of great.
Yeah, because they've like all been removed.
They've all been
right?
removed, right? So yes, no. If it's yes, again, I always go to unknown unless I'm sure that it's one of the two. I think unknown is the fine answer there. There's an addendum that goes with it. So by checking yes, you automatically trigger this OREF 046 wood stove wood burning fireplace insert addendum. And I think the buyer, especially in this hot seller's market, the buyer can take the responsibility for removing it. If they remove it or not, isn't your problem, because you just are responsible between.
Next time, so.
Right, until they sell next time, right?
I've seen though where the lenders have called.
Some lenders are calling out.
Appraiser will.
Yeah,
But it doesn't have to be removed before it closes, it's
Some will, or they
Some
want
will.
proof of it that it has been.
just.
We went through this a few years
it was
back.
a
Where
really
it
hot
was
big
like
deal.
really super
Yeah.
strict on it, and the lender would request the paperwork to prove that it had
Yeah.
been removed, and because they have to send it through DEQ.
Yeah, it has to be taken to like a certified disposal company
Yeah,
to scrap it.
Decommissioner.
Yeah,
or something.
But yeah,
My buyers ended up having to have one actually installed on their home.
yeah, really, to replace it.
True, but
Because the fireplace, they had it just open, but it wasn't operable, and so they required
Really,
to put an insert in there to make sure it was functioning.
wow,
Because there was just like a pump hanging out, it was super weird.
that is super weird.
that is, they took it out and left it.
Something.
Probably
yeah,
so they wouldn't have to
they
deal
put a
with
brand
this.
new one, which is really, actually really nice.
Yeah,
Huh,
it's great for your buyer. It's not so great for the seller.
yeah,
Home warranty, right? So if you check, even if you check no, like your eye immediately goes down to this, like regardless, your eye goes right here. And so, and I've made this mistake, since I don't make a lot of mistakes, I've made it before. And I thought that, oh, they're asking for this, even though they check, buyer pays for it, so seller, this will be here.
Stands out.
So I would just leave it out, like, doesn't need to stand out, leave that blank, like, just say no, leave it blank. And if they wanna pay for one, they wanna buy one, they can always do that. Nothing's
Yeah.
stopping them from doing it, doesn't need to be in the agreement.
Just let escrow know.
Yeah. Okay, escrow, right, we talked about escrow a little bit, but it's a neutral third party that handles the closing of the transaction. It's like having I liken it to playing on your home basketball court, like, yeah, the 3-point line's the same distance to the hoop, the hoop's the same size that it is in your gym or their gym, but playing on your home court, it's like the home team, get the crowd root for you, same thing with escrow, your phone rings first if there's an issue. It's better to have your escrow person working. So I always ask for my own person unless it's a really, really competitive offer, then I would cave and ask for theirs. But as a buyer, I always ask for mine. I always hope that people want to use mine. I've countered back saying to use mine as a seller.
Can you just pick like, I mean.
Yep, yep. That's what I do. I would find that, like, if you have a seller that you, like an escrow officer that you've liked, or that you've been in a meeting here and you like their style, something about them resonated with you, go for that, right? Because it's important. Like, it's good to build a relationship, and it's good to just use that one person as much as you can, because then you'll start getting favors.
Like preferred lenders, like, for like. Your business, of course. like,
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, just going through one transaction doesn't necessarily
Mhm.
give me enough information.
No.
Yes, it was great, but like, I want to refer you.
Are you gonna refer me?
What was that?
On lenders, I would ask, are you gonna refer people to me as well, right? But yeah, escrow,
There's a lot of good,
definitely.
yeah.
You wanna make sure they have the right, they can be really fantastic and amazing at the paperwork and everything that they need to do on the end, but how are they personally at the table, sitting with your clients? You wanna make sure they're good at that as well, right? And then it is also nice to be able to grab it on the weekend if you need to get something, because you're writing an offer, maybe there's something about the property you really need to get some information on, if that's available to you.
I'd want to make sure that they made me look good, right? That's always my first thing.
Absolutely.
Make me look good. They have the same work ethic that you do, and that they're honest, that they're not, that they're and that they're thorough, right? Because they want to make sure that they're dotting all the i's and crossing the t's. Because even the best escrow officer will get thrown a curveball. The one I just closed, my buyer's employment pay structure changed like a week before closing. And we couldn't get a really definitive letter out of her company saying what her pay schedule was. It really messed things up. But luckily my lender was good and she thought on her feet, and it actually got a better product for my clients because they actually made less money. So they actually qualified for a new product, which was great for them. But it was harrowing, and like we were rushing around. Loan docs got there the day of closing. Like we weren't sure we were gonna close on time. Everybody was pissed because at the end everybody's worried about moving and this. So she made me look good. They don't think so, but she did a really, really good job given the situation. You know, like the mortgage, it was like she actually got it from underwriting. It was a mortgage insurance company that said, this ain't gonna work for us. So like the total like last thing, like usually not an issue, but they said they had a problem with it. But these things pop up. So you want to make sure that they're really thorough because it gets by the best of them.
What if the listing agent wants a certain title and I want another one? Who do I list on the agreement?
I would probably, because it's a neutral third party, unless my clients had a specific relationship with a title company, then I would use the seller's title company in that situation. It's never worth losing a deal over escrow. It can be super annoying having a bad escrow officer,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
Usually it's not
Usually
detrimental.
fix them.
Yeah,
The
you-
listing you get on the listing.
Yeah.
The listing will always put one on there.
it's been the custom.
And you'll get,
It's been the custom and it's backwards. It's been the custom that you use the seller's escrow company.
and the agents, some agents will push, Well, we've already ordered everything from there.
Which is-
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's actually the buyer's choice.
Yeah,
The
well,
buyer
it's a-
can change
yeah,
it.
so it's the buyer, because the insurance issue is to the benefit of the buyer.
Yeah.
The buyer gets to choose the insurance company, but that's not the escrow company. Escrow companies have their own insurance that they typically use, but, so it's not, we think of the escrow company, we think of title insurance as the exact same thing. They aren't necessarily the same entity. They can still shop it around. So you could probably go to Lawyer's Title and get whatever insurance insurance you could get over WFG. So it is, people have claimed that before. They say it's it's a trust act violation.
Right.
I don't think it is, but,
Title companies have to argue with each other about it.
yeah.
That's the person and they actually counter.
Yeah.
Counter was, no, we actually want to use ours.
But-
Okay.
But here's the thing, like, what if they hadn't countered and they gone with the other couple that said they had the exact same terms as you,
Right.
but they wanted to use their escrow company? It sucks to lose a deal over an escrow company. So I would never lose whatever an escrow company,
Right,
ever,
right.
ever. Okay. So,
Earnest money.
well, prorations are typically at the closing date, but they can also be to the date that buyer's entitled to possession. That actually would be, if you were trying not to charge if you're trying to not charge anything for rent, this would offset some of your client's costs by a little bit by having the prorations for taxes and insurance
Yeah,
going a month or two out or whatever that period of time is, the possession date.
yeah.
So, and you could probably sneak that by and no one would notice. Like that's, like remember I said sometimes the little boxes, nobody wants to negotiate over. So,
That's a
okay,
Is it blank, so you said?
no, you check,
No,
you
no,
always
you
check
have to
one of
check
these.
one.
You always have to check one, the closing date or the date buyer's entitled to possession. I think that you could probably sneak that by and have nobody question you about it. And then all of a sudden closing,
Or extended stay.
If they want to stay 2 months later or whatever,
Then obviously you want.
go to possession,
Their possession.
because then your buyers are paying taxes.
Right, but if
Until
it's closing date, they're moving in next day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's closing.
right, closing same day, yeah. And then, this is auto-populated from the first page. Down here, we're gonna talk about where where the earnest money deposit is gonna go, always directly with escrow. Always directly with escrow. And make sure it's in Oregon. So like, if you close a deal with Zillow, they used to not have they may still not have local earnest money accounts. You wanna make sure the earnest money stays in the state because it's governed by the laws of the state. If it goes to Delaware, it's governed by the laws in Delaware, right? So you wanna make sure that if you choose a local title company, earnest money is gonna stay at state, right? But if it's a company you haven't recognized before, I would certainly get on the phone, it's like, hey, where are your earnest money deposits held? Can I get that in writing? Cool. Again, this would be, in addition, if there's additional earnest money, you can handle the accordance with the selected instructions, which we're not doing. So breach, like these are talking about breaches here. So 27.2 and 27.3 talk about what happens to earnest money should anybody breach a contract. It's important to know this. 27.3 to buyer, seller it's very difficult it's very easy for the buyer to get it back. But if somehow the seller were to breach a contract, that would obviously be terms for the buyer to receive the earnest money. But 27.3 is more important. So if seller signs and accepts this agreement and title is marketable, and one buyer has materially misrepresented buyer's financial status, right? That's bad. These are ways that the buyer would lose their earnest money. So if they misrepresented their financial status, if buyer's bank does not pay when presented any check given as earnest money or fails to timely make a wire transfer for buyer's earnest money. So like if they write a bad check, right, a check that bounces. If buyer fails to complete this transaction in accordance with material terms of this agreement, then seller or seller's option may terminate this agreement and all earnest money paid or agreed to be paid shall be paid as seller liquidated damages. So, like if you've agreed to have your earnest money deposit in 3 days, but you didn't get to the bank in time, you're gonna do it on the 4th day, depositing it you're already in breach, right? So depositing it, even though it says here shall be paid, like even though it hasn't been determined to be deposited yet. If it were to be deposited, it'd be easy for the seller to argue and hold on to it. If it wasn't deposited, it's a lot easier for them to move on from it because they have to come get you for it. It's a much more difficult, economically speaking, it's gonna be a lot harder for them to get that money and to put pressure on you for that money. But technically, it would be forfeited. Closing, so that's where the closing date goes, right? Closing, so the terms close with a capital C, closing date shall mean when the deed or contract is recorded. So that's not the day we all go sign, that's the day that it actually changes hands.
Yeah.
Okay,
That date changes often, right?
oh yeah, this is the most widely changed
What do
thing.
you just put in like 30, like roughly 30 days from then?
You, well, find out what works for your clients, right? Remember, that was one of the terms, that was one of the things we're gonna ask in our questionnaire, find out what closing date works for them. Usually, from the seller's perspective, so sooner is better, but knowing what the seller wants, it gives you an edge in getting your offer accepted. Like, what if this, like, if the seller told you what they wanted, it would make it really easy, right? So this may be one thing that you can give them really easily that they want, the closing date, maybe something that's easy for you to give. A quick close, like 30 days. You can even probably do 4 weeks. A longer close is pretty easy too, but not always great for your clients.
Right. Closing dates on Fridays. Not recommended.
Yeah, because if it's late,
There's some counties that close early,
Clackamas County closes at noon, so.
so no recording. And do you think the lender's gonna get everything done and wires you gotta think about everything that has to happen. Wires have to come in from the lender and your buyer, and paperwork has to be signed, and it has to get over to the county to record before the closing actually takes place. So Fridays,
Typically, in that scenario, your client's probably signing on Wednesday or Thursday. All the money's already, all their personal funds have already been sent in, their down payment, it's always there by Thursday. So they're just waiting for the lender to send their wire, right? But wire cutoffs come in late, sometimes the wires come in later in the day. So you would want that wire sent the day before probably from the lender. If it didn't come in the day before and you know it's in a county that closes early, you might be like, we're not closed
We're not
today, we have to
closing.
push to Monday. And then your clients have like made all their plans to close on Friday because they're moving in on over the weekend
yeah,
and they can't move in. And they don't have to work for their stuff to go because they just moved out of their apartment on Friday. But it caused a big headache, right?
yeah.
So you live in your house.
Yup.
So the closing disclosure, we talked about that. The title company came in and gave you guys a pretty good description on that. Title insurance costs, deed, it's just talking about giving you a clean marketable deed to the property. This goes back into the conversations we had. Possession, right? So if anything but one, if the answer is anything but one, you're going to use one of these addendums here, preferably not agreement to occupy before closing, because I don't want everyone to see that. Agreement to occupy after closing, if you're using that addendum, present it, this is when you fill it out, right? As soon as you check that box, you'll fill that thing out to present along with your offer. This is a really important part to fill out. Sometimes people miss it. We have one right now where we had the children did not want to vacate the property. They actually lit a fire in the house because they were so mad the parents were selling it. Do you think the buyer was like, that's a tenant. Are they gonna leave? So they actually ended up costing the seller like $3,000 to get something in writing from the kid saying he's moving. It's tough, right? But the buyer's agent did not check either one of these boxes. So if we had gotten to push come to shove, I had already had a kind of a case laid out in our mind where we would have been able to keep their earnest money because they failed not to close based upon something nothing important. But they need to make sure they check these boxes, right? Make sure you check those boxes. Usually the answer is no, the seller should not have responsibility for removing tenants. Because you check yes, then you get all the trappings that come along with that.
Why don't we want occupancy prior to closing?
Why not? Well, because you've got a tenant. So you've got someone moving into the house, just one, you have a tenant. Instead, like, even though they're not listed as a tenant now, they're excluded from landlord-tenant law before they move in, like once they move in and up to 90 days after, for that period of time, for 90 days, as part of a real estate transaction, they're excluded from landlord-tenant law until they default and they don't pay rent or they're in the property illegally. Now they're a tenant again. And now you've got to evict them. So what happens if you move somebody in early and they decide they don't want to buy the house? They move in like, oh my God, like the whole thing creaks. It's haunted. It's any number of things,
The
right?
road noise.
It smells bad. The road noise.
Oh, the pipes are leaking.
Oh my God. Oh, so many things they get fined, right? And they can
Oh.
decide, or their loan falls apart. I heard of somebody.
Oh, I had one.
I heard some, let me finish my answer.
Yeah.
I went first. I heard somebody, a friend of mine, she was representing a buyer. She moved into the house. She got her into the house early. They painted the house red, and then their loan fell apart. How'd that go? That didn't go well.
Okay, that one's
Yeah.
almost kind of like. We, I had buyers who were, actually the sellers had moved out. We only had possession early on the day of closing. Okay, so it was the day of closing. We were supposed to record, but they got to start moving in that morning because of the situation where they were moving out. So the day of closing, everybody signed. One of my buyers are getting ready to sign. The lender pulls a credit report on the day of closing.
It's not unusual.
I gave my buyers that whole list of what not to do and what to do, right? The wife, unbeknownst to the husband, didn't pay one credit card bill for 2 months. They no longer qualified to purchase a home. So they had to move back out. They were in the middle of moving in.
And luckily they moved out because if
They
stayed-
did.
If they stayed, it would have been evicted and you look kind of like a mess.
That's a horror story. Yours, they painted it red.
They painted red.
That goes into the other thing of like, I think this goes to the, repairs, right? When you have repairs that need to be done on a home and the buyer is like, oh, well, we'll pay for that to be done prior to closing. They pay for it. What if the house falls apart, the deal falls apart and they don't get to buy it? They paid for repairs on a home that they don't own. Try getting that money back.
Yeah, never get that. It's gone.
There's lots of things that people try to do to try to make deals happen and do the best thing, and it can backfire
Can
in
we-
so many ways.
Can we just move into the garage? Can we move into the garage?
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
What if they start a fire? What if something in that, they moved into the garage, starts a fire and the whole house burns down?
Or what if the house, electrical fire started and the buyers lost all their stuff?
Mhm.
Do they have renter's insurance on their property that's in the garage?
That's a mess.
So many things.
No early occupancy ever. Like I've asked for it. Hey, this is Kelly. My clients are hoping to have early occupancy. I didn't think so, thanks. Like.
Yeah.
Not to that, almost to that degree. Like the answer is always, I told them the answer is gonna be no, but I had to ask. But I told them the answer is gonna be no. Cause I don't want it, like, it's not good for anybody.
It's not.
Yeah, so if somebody asks you, you go to your client because you have to, and you tell them, we should absolutely, in no certain circumstances, not ever. do
Here are
this."
all the things that could go wrong.
Yeah, and here's the one thing to go right. It doesn't benefit you at all.
We have
Okay.
5 minutes, Kelly. The rest of it just goes down to the deed, right?
Yeah, pretty much, no.
Love you,
Make
tax,
sure you check the is or is not.
special assessment.
Yeah.
Those are really.
Mediation, arbitration, so you go, if it's less than $10,000, small claims court, more than $10,000, everybody agrees to go to mediation, arbitration, unless you can have a compelling reason to get it into a court. And then, expiration date of the offer, like, I would not try to be a bully and say, I want my offer reviewed by 10 o'clock tonight, unless you knew they were gonna review this evening. Or if you knew they would be around, maybe you could do it, you could push that, but I think I try to be gracious with these, because I don't think it's a really, I think if you're trying to negotiate hard, putting a short fuse on the, expiration of your offer doesn't really have that much of an effect.
I guess the only thing is like if you show the client 3 houses this weekend.
That'd
Right,
be the
hey,
time.
we need to know if we get this house, if not, they want right now.
But in the seller's market, the seller's gonna be like, okay,
All
I guess
right.
that's true,
Yeah.
right now.
that's
Yeah.
awesome, cool.
So 24 hours, is that like sufficient? Is that standard?
It depends, yeah, it depends on the situation, there could be, everyone's gonna be a little bit different, like I would give 24 hours, but like if it was expiring in the middle of a weekday, then maybe not, then maybe I'd give it to that following.
Till
weekend.
5 PM the next
So give them
day.
evening, following evening.
Okay.
Maybe, but that's just me, like, I ignore these, I used to ignore these all the time, when I was listing and selling a lot of properties. Like, if it didn't fit our timeline, then I would just ignore it, because we had a lot of leverage, we had other offers, so I didn't really care what your date said on there, we were gonna review and we're gonna review. So,
It's a good that's one of the questions you would ask the agent, right? When are you able to present to your seller? Or maybe they're out of town, maybe they're out of the country.
So just to be a pill, what's wrong with that?
Just honey typed really fast.
I had to use this.
Thanks.
Thank you. for
Hey, you're
doing
welcome.
that. Thank you for doing that. So it should be capital J, capital Smith, right? Right. And so there's, if you go back down, if you go back at the top, there is a list, not that far, sorry,
Oh.
a little bit further. There's a list of definitions a little bit further.
The definitions,
Uh-huh.
okay.
So this is a good spot to know. Like I would go through and read this, so like so you can see, you know, sale agreement to agent or firm that refers to our company or the companies, you know, just description of the business day, see how agreement. So this is where they're making a capitalized term. I love capitalized terms. I use capitalized terms whenever possible. Agreement is referring to this purchase agreement, or sale agreement to this purchase agreement. It also says in here that like a buyer in its in their singular form represents the both parties. Seller in its singular form represents the both parties. When it's capitalized, right? So use these learn these capitalized terms. Like whenever I see, you know, the word property, it's referring to the property that's being sold with lowercase p. I'm like, just use your pinky and push the P, and now you're actually talking about this property, right? Because to use the example earlier, where there was the word closed and closing in the same sentence, and one was capitalized while the other was a lowercase. Those are huge distinctions, right? One's talking about the closing of the house way over there, and this one's talking about the closing of this house. So knowing how to use those capitalized terms will help you be specific, because you don't want them you don't want to end up in arbitration going, well, we thought closing meant this closing. Well, no, but we thought it was this closing. And now you have two people on two different terms. Okay, so since we ran out of time, here's your homework. And we'll do this on the
And
next
we're
one.
gonna work on it, the offer on Thursday.
We'll work on it on Thursday. Okay, so we're gonna do an offer on 19 Da Vinci Street.
MLS number 211-44821.
I would suggest getting a head start and starting to do it. I think there's so much, like, I think that I've seen y'all learn more from making your own mistakes than us showing you how to fill it out. So go in there and screw it all up, make stupid mistakes, come be prepared to have them critiqued, leave your ego outside. We'll come back in, we'll get them all straight. And I think you guys will learn a ton from doing that. Like, I think that is,
Actually writing mistakes on them.
yeah, I think actually just doing it your best and don't be afraid to fail, like really fail large, right? Don't worry about making mistakes, because we have clients on these, right? This is where you want to make mistakes.
Are there anything that we want, any information we want to give them? Are they just choosing their own buyer and their own?
Yeah, I think they can choose their own buyer. Obviously, the seller's here. And there's all kinds of information in here that you're going to need for your,
Yeah, watch for additional addendums.
yeah.
Offers are due by 5 o'clock.
Are they?
No rush.
Offers are due by noon on
Mine-
Thursday.
Yeah, offers due noon on Thursday,
Yeah,
and that's
Thursday.
real buyer.
So you're not giving us a scenario?
Nope.
No, this time here's the property.
Okay.
You guys can make up your own buyer and what they want to write. But we want you to pay attention to what forms need to be added to it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, see if you guys are implementing it correctly. I mean, I guess we could give you guys terms, but I think it's better if you guys
Yeah.
challenge yourselves.
I need some tips on like, maybe I have like some brands who've been looking for 4 months now.
Have they been writing offers?
We've written one.
Mm-hmm. What is it they're looking for?
They're looking for detached on the top and spoiling. They're not super picky as far as like size, but just wanted to have a nice yard and garden, some updates, they don't want to fix or they don't want to have to move it.
So what was it about the house that they did write on that you think they liked? This
It was,
is moving ready,
yeah.
but it probably sold for how much more than what you guys wrote for?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure.
That would be where I would start.
It might be, yeah.
That's what I would do. I would go back to them and say, hey, for your information, that house sold for this much more than what it was for. That'd be really, really
Yeah, and
nice.
they upped their budget after that, actually.
Okay, that's good.
Because of that.
Uh-huh.
Because of that situation, and their lender was giving no service, like, they needed to,
That's frustrating.
so that was true, but.
Hey, sometimes we have to count.
The, I would make the impression upon them, like, look, it seems, the home values are still going up. Like, even though
Yeah.
the market may not be as hot as it was, things are still, especially over there, still in that price point, still selling for more than asking. But instead of 10 offers, maybe they only have 5. So instead of going for 50 over asking, it's going for 25.
Mhm.
But that's still going up, like every month, it's still going up. So while they're, kicking tires, getting picky, the house they want is getting more expensive, like,
What's funny is,
with every
I
closing.
didn't get my license yet, I did everything, I was waiting for it, and Jenny,
Yeah.
she was like, hey, I have this pocket listing, this is what you guys are looking for, I know you're getting your license, it sounds silly to buy a house before you get your license, but if you do wait, even by the time you get a license,
Right.
that house will now be, and it's funny, because now we moved in, it's been a month, and the same floor plan is selling for 25.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And
Right.
it's like, what I would have saved for commissions, being the agent, or talking now.
You would have saved like 9
I
grand.
actually saved more, if,
Yeah,
now
by buying
I'm
that.
her, and
That's a really great anecdote that you could share. Like, hey, I was just talking to some clients. This is really interesting. What's going on in the market. I was talking to some colleagues, and she said that instead of waiting, she bought, and this is why, and look what's happening.
I've got buyers that closed in May and they've been looking in Hillsborough. We're now 50,000 plus, almost actually 75 to 100,000 because of the escalation
Yeah.
clauses, because it's 100% seller's market there. They're priced out. They can't even buy in their price point what they sold in May
Yeah, for sure.
because it's over now.
Yeah. The things that are closing, the people who are going to contract today are having equity by close.
Yep.
Yeah, they're out of town until the first week of September.
I mean, hopefully interest rates will go down a little bit, which should,
Yeah.
they're supposed to go down. Looks like they're gonna go down, so that should increase their buying power. That's also gonna make the market hot. So
Yeah.
I would just I just prep them and just be like,
Have them talk to them.
get market stats, so get them stats so they can see what's going on, like what the appreciation is. If you need help with that.
All right.
Good job.
well, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you online.
We'll see you guys on Thursday, in person or Zoom.
Yeah, Anna, Carrie, thank you for great questions.
Austin, you can stop recording if you're in there.